The government today announced new rules to regulate digital content, featuring a code of ethics and a three-tier grievance redressal network for news sites and OTT streaming platforms. The Union IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad said the rules will empower users of social media. It's called the Guidelines for Intermediaries and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021. It prescribes for the first time how digital news organizations, social media platforms and streaming services will be regulated by the government. The rules, involving a strict oversight mechanism, involve several ministries and a code of ethics that ban content affecting the sovereignty and integrity of India and that which threatens national security. Now, social media giants will be required to appoint India-based compliance officers. If they remove content, they'll be required to inform users, give reasons for taking down their post and hearing them as well. But very significantly, when it comes to social media platforms, they have been asked to provide, potentially to the government, the name of the originator of a post. A lot of them, for example, WhatsApp, would argue that encryption technology, end-to-end encryption technology, means that that is just not possible. So hypothetically, that potential clash between what the law says and what technology can achieve is going to be an area of huge problems. Well, joining us now, Par Gupta. He's a lawyer and executive director of the Internet Freedom Foundation. Mayank Tiwari is a Bollywood writer. We'll be joined by our other panelists in a moment. But apart, firstly, to the entire point of how the government now wants social media platforms to identify where the originator is, who the originator is that technologically even possible?
So, Vishnu, while this may be technologically possible, the first thing to understand is that it undermines one of the core values of what is end-to-end encryption, what is given on instant messaging platforms, let's say WhatsApp, Signal, or Telegram, even in certain settings. So what end-to-end encryption does is that it keeps your conversations private, in which the content of the message does not tie in with the identity of the author. And given the volume of information which is just generated in these instant messaging conversations by you and me, we quite often talk carelessly. We don't think about what we are saying to another person. What this does is it brings in a level of self-censorship, because by tying the content of a message with each author, which is called the originator, even though the rules do not require the government or do not empower the government to demand the text of that message, but under other frameworks it can do it, it essentially means each message which is text, which may be audio, which may be video or picture, it's tied to the identity of a person that, hey, it's a smartphone owned by Apar Gupta, and Apar Gupta sent this message or text across. It will cause a high amount of self-censorship. It will also increase the amount of data which is gathered by all of these technology platforms. This is just one of the requirements. There are other requirements as well on social media companies, including taking best effort basis towards implementing.
And we'll talk about that in a moment, because that's the other key part of it. But Mayank, I wanted to come to you as a writer in Bollywood. Do you fear that there is now going to be far greater scrutiny at the level of the government on what you decide to produce?
Definitely, definitely. And again, this entire procedure, I think the one word that stuck with me during the press conference was compliance. And I think government wants everybody to fall into line with respect to what they think is the norm. Because what are these complaints? What are these reactions that are coming to them from people? What are they about? Recently, we saw what happened with the TV show called Tandav, where the producers had to completely apologize for what they had done. The same thing happened to some extent with AK versus AK. And every time we come and discuss this, the issue remains the same, that this is a push to get the industry to toe the line, to deliver content which is not pushing the envelope, which is not talking about the fault lines in society, which is not showing you things that they are as they are. So this is, once the rules comes out, they will be even more complicated, and we will just be tied up in knots. And this is what this procedure is.
Thopali Srinivas is the advisor for the Telangana IT cell of the BJP. He joins us now. Mr. Srinivas, what is it that the government is trying to do over here? Essentially draw a red line on what producers can produce and what they can't, what you can share on social media and what you can't? Who actually decides that?
Thank you, Vishnu, for this lovely debate. And I've been listening to the various panelists, two panelists before me. The compliant word as such can be deciphered in a various meanings. According to me, what the government is trying to say is just follow the guidelines, and we are not controlling anybody's creativity, anybody's content writing, nothing. Just follow it. Make sure that it is catering to the entire universe, the society, without any causing any harm to the various. The bottom line, the guidelines that is anything inflammatory which can cause any fights or any riots.
What is inflammatory? What is offensive? What is libelous? What is creative license? Who decides that? Because in this document, none of that is defined. I don't even think you can define a lot of these things.
Vishnu, see, it's all. If I say in a subjective matter, you have to have a self control on what you're doing right now.
But who decides self control?
Self control has to be decided by the company itself, which is trying to promote that particular content to a particular platform or social media platform, and you have
but
to
to whose standards, sir? That's the point. When you say self control about what? To what extent? Who decides self control?
For example, Vishnu, okay, let me tell you like this. You have seen what happened on 26th of January when there was a lot of commotion happening on Red Fort, and where the symbol of our democracy was attacked. Even our union flag also was being attacked there. Now, showing these things in such a light,
that's a violation of the flag. That was potentially a violation of the flag code, and it was violence, which is already taken care of in the law.
Yes,
right.
And plus,
but I'm sure you saw what the court has had to say about the manner in which people were like Disha Ravi were actually picked up, right? The court was absolutely clear that sedition and things like that cannot be applied. That's a separate argument, right?
See, let me tell you like this. It is not that we are something that BJP is doing for the first time. No. There has been a lot of cases during UPA time also when cartoonists were jailed.
I'm not saying this is UPA versus BJP, but let me go across to Shaina NC, who also joins us, and she's a board member of Prasar Bharati as well. Shaina, one of the regulations over here is actually that in the case of streaming platforms, there will be a categorization, right? So, for example, classification of content will be age-based and genre-based. However, I'm just trying to understand in the context of something people view at home, you can classify it higher. What guarantee is there that that's going to be complied by? That's just what something to advise parents. Is that what the goal is?
So Vishnu, I want to make one opening comment, if you allow me, before I answer your question. There has to be a grievance redressal system for the OTT platform as well as the digital space. Now, this is something that has been raised in Parliament over 50 times.
Right.
There have been over 50 times this question has been raised by individual party members, various viewpoints, and they have said that the digital media up until now has no code of ethics. And this is something which is worrisome. If you look at content of print media or electronic media, you do abide by the Press Council. TV has to follow a program code, as does all other media platforms. And it must be a level playing field. Why should the OTT platform or the digital space be any different from the rest? People have also demanded this on multiple occasions. Forget the 50 questions raised in Parliament. There have been self-regulation mechanisms which have been formed. And obviously, when we talk about the OTT platform, do understand the kind of language being used, the disrespect. We talk about women's dignity, the way women are being portrayed, the abuse, the content which has not even got a plus 13 or plus 16. And OTT platforms will have self-classification.
Okay.
The second tier, both ministers, Ravi Shankar Prasadji and Prakash Javadekar of the Information Broadcasting Ministry, to which we report, has also said that, there will be a body headed by an eminent individual. So it's not about containing freedom, but every freedom has to be responsible freedom. You cannot sit here and say that, it is your right to speak when it comes to disrespecting your country, disrespecting women, using foul language. And I think that the OTT and digital media
So
will
foul
have
language
to
is not allowed.
disclose information about themselves. It's high time we
But
know.
it ultimately,
Look at what is
but China,
coming
it
on
really
Facebook,
boils down to
Twitter, Instagram,
who decides what is foul and what is not foul? Who decides what is insulting and what is not insulting? Who decides what is, obscene and what is not? What is defamatory in some cases and what is not?
No,
that's the problem, right? It's these definitions.
We have to understand there is a code, there is ethics. There are ethics for online news as well as offline. For the OTT platform, the digital space. Today, look at the amount
There is something called creative license as well, Shaina.
No, but there is a 3-level grievance redressal mechanism which is independent in nature.
Okay, so that will deal. So that will deal with that.
I don't understand why we must just disagree for the heck of disagreeing when the government is not imposing in any way on your freedom. But if you believe your freedom of expression can be misrepresented, then it is a huge contention.
Okay.
Do understand that this is not the first time we have discussed the OTT platforms and social media platforms and the kind of content.
All right, Shaina, I get your point. I get the point that you're making, and you've actually made many of them. Jawahar Sarkar joins us as well. Do you believe that this explanation being provided by the government now is adequate, that there is a regulatory mechanism, there's a process through which people, if they have a problem, can say they have a problem, and vice versa? It listens to all sides. Is that good enough for OTT platforms?
See, there are two separate categories of information we are dealing with. And the rules also deal with it in two separate categories. One is what we call the social media intermediaries. So that will be WhatsApp, Twitter, and others, where the IT Act has some powers, but it is drawn extensively from different sections. It's almost like a Chaturbhuja Durga who needs powers from various places to empower herself. But never mind. So that is one place where they are using the word significant social media intermediaries. In short, platforms. Platforms have to reveal, platforms have to do this, platforms have to do that, and we can take it up to the originators. The originator thing is not ipso facto contestable, because there are originations that are happening of a very dangerous nature. The point is, will it be used? You see, everyone else has seen the government from outside or at the fringe. I have worked for it. I've been with the Minister of INB for 5 years, so I know how we think, how our people think. Now, this is a hegemonic act. Let's be very clear about that. So I've dealt with part one, where social media is subject to a series of controls under the IT Act. We can get into the details. Some have already explained. The second one is more dangerous, because the second one is the only space that is left to us, the digital online media, digital online press. That is the only space left to us, because the entire mainstream media, save 2 or 3 newspapers, have capitulated. So that is a place where real facts and real views are articulated, and it's circulated among those who want to see it. It's not imposed. Now, there they have brought in this 3-tier level of...
with government regulation as the last point, right?
Government regulations.
And a joint secretary who can actually make a call and is empowered apparently to pull content.
The empowered thing is a committee of 8 officers. Civil servants, bureaucrats, put it whatever way you will. But 8 officers will sit in judgment, and here... this where the control over digital online media is concerned.
But there's an eminent person as well. It's not just bureaucrats.
8 of them will be sitting. Hang on. On this thing, it will go to a committee, interministerial committee of 8 officers from representing 8 departments of the government of India. And they will be adjudicating whether this thing is okay or possible or not. But remember,
yes,
a new ploy has been brought about, and this is legitimization of a tactics that we call proxy grievance. Proxy grievance is the type of grievance where somebody goes and files an FIR that what Vishnu Som said hurts my religious sentiment.
Right.
It's not government.
So
It goes by
what you're
proxy.
basically saying is that the opportunities over here for contesting content are very easy, and sometimes frivolous complaints
Yes,
can be a huge
there's
problem.
a Pandora's box
All right,
that's been opened now.
Mr. Sarkar, I need to wrap this up over here. I've got Mukul Rohatgi as well on this. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us and sharing those views. Let's listen into what Mukul Rohatgi, the senior Supreme Court lawyer, had to say about some of the guidelines in the new rules. Sir, if we look at social media, the rule says that all social media companies have to tell users not to host defamatory, obscene, pornographic, pedophilic, invasive of another person's privacy, etc., information, or even insulting, libelous, inconsistent. How does one define insulting? How does one define inconsistent? How does one even define privacy in the context of social media?
Now, Vishnu, you have raised a very, very important question. And this question transcends from regulatory control into invasions of privacy. That is a very, very prickly subject. But let me first tell you, your users must know that whether it is Facebook, whether it is Twitter, whether it's WhatsApp, these social media platforms are mere virtual platforms on which people come and express their views. It's not like making a film,
right,
where a director makes a film, puts the actors in it, tells a story, right, wrong, and has various nuances in a film. You may have a rape, you may have a murder, you may have a comedy. Now here, it's a virtual platform which is neutral. We are in law under the IT Act. By we, I mean the social sites. They are called intermediaries. They don't decide the question you have raised. What is insulting? What is in bad taste? What is in good taste? What may be a joke to me, may be a flirtatious joke to me, may be seen in a bad light by somebody. You know, something like Lady Chatterley's lover.
Right.
So firstly, I am not a judge, and the Supreme Court has already ruled in a case called Shreya Singhal,
yes,
who's also a lawyer, that the intermediaries cannot be judges to decide this is offensive or insulting.
Yeah.
It is either for a government authority to decide or a court to decide. Basically, a court to decide.
But they've overruled that. Now it's legislation, right? So
Yeah,
Shreya
so
Singhal doesn't stand.
So every day we are doing cases where a person goes to a court and says, look, so-and-so has posted offensive pictures about me or my friend or my family, and this should be taken down. So the court orders that it should be taken down, and Facebook and WhatsApp, I've been appearing for these social sites for some years now, that these sites, then take it down. There is no problem. They never contest. But they cannot be a judge. And the Supreme Court says, so firstly, if the onus is on us, it is very difficult for us to, by us I mean these sites, for these sites to discharge the onus. Now, if I can't discharge the onus, the second question. Now, I noticed that they say that you must be able to find out who is the originator of WhatsApp.
Right.
Right. Now,
that means disclosing identity.
Yeah, so now let's examine it a little further. In a WhatsApp, not Facebook, in a WhatsApp message, I send you a message.
Yeah, it's encrypted, and you can't do it, right?
Yes, it is completely encrypted.
Yeah, the information is not with the servers of WhatsApp at all. It doesn't exist. It's user to user.
An affidavit in the Supreme Court that WhatsApp itself cannot read the contents of the message. Now the second question. If I send you a message, you know it has come from me. But if you send the same message to another friend,
yes,
maybe it is flirtatious, maybe it is bad, your friend will know that you have sent it, but not that Mr. Rohatgi was the originator of the message.
Yeah, so it will be a wild goose chase, right?
Yeah, so now under the new regulation, if the originator has to be made available, the originator's number, Then on the WhatsApp which I send to you, my number will come. And when you send the WhatsApp further, my number will still remain pasted. And if it has gone 100 times, my number will always remain pasted as the man who sent it and is being repeatedly forwarded. So here comes an issue of privacy. Should, in fact, a question has been raised in a case in the Supreme Court filed by an MP called Mr. Binoy Viswam, that nobody should in fact know that I have sent a message to Vishnu. Forget the contents. The fact that I have sent you a message is also an aspect of privacy.
Right.
So, you know, this privacy issue has now been settled by a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court to say that privacy sits in fundamental rights under the Constitution.
Right.
So I'm not saying that regulation by itself is a bad thing. I wish there could have been self-regulation, so the government wouldn't have stepped in. But now that the government has stepped in for security of the nation, etc., or whatever, I don't say that it is a bad thing. But I don't think it has been fully thought out. It's kind of a little hasty.
No, but Mr. Rohde, let me ask you this, because you asked me you raised an important point. It just seems that every other clause, so many clauses in this entire 29-page document refers to a threat to unity, integrity, defense, security of sovereignty of India, friendly relations with foreign nations, public order. These can at one level always be excuses. You can subsume everything under national security and say it is a threat, right? We can do a defense story and somebody can say it is a threat, right? So information gets shut down. Is that not a worry? That tomorrow a WhatsApp or a Facebook can be told this information is wrong, it affects us because of friendly relations with another country, shut it down, shut down the message. And therefore, anything can be shut down.
No, and also see, the worry is that it is up to an offense of 5 years. Right? Yes. That also I saw. Now that also is not very easy. You know, it's not black and white. But I mean, let me put it this way. The bottom line is this, that some amount of regulation is fine, because nobody can have a completely unregulated business.
Right.
So if TV is regulated, you are regulated, then even an OTT must be regulated.
Yes.
So that's a level playing field. So far, so good. But in that business of regulation, you cannot trench upon other rights.
Right.
For this encryption, which I am saying, which WhatsApp proudly claims from end to end, this encryption will have to break, because you will have to then store as to who sent what.
Yeah.
And you have a data protection law which says you can't store any material.
Right.
Rightly so. Now here you will be bound to store. How will you know the originator is unless you store? And store what? Billions and millions of messages.
And the other issue, of course, affects OTT platforms. They propose to set up self-regulation at the level of the company, a self-regulatory body including, right? And third, an oversight mechanism where a joint secretary, as I understand it, has a right to pull content, to order something to be blocked or shut down. Again, when it comes to a freedom of expression, when it comes to, say, content on Netflix or Amazon Prime or what have you, is that not going to be a big problem going forward?
It will be. My only hope is, you know, all these will go to court. People who want privacy will go to court. People who want the regulations will go to court. OTTs like Netflix or whatever may go to court. It will ultimately have to be resolved. But my only hope is that the regulation is not ham-handed, is not heavy, and at the end of the day, you don't use a hammer to kill a fly.
Right.
That's how I would end it.
I agree, sir. The implementation of this is where, you know, it could be potentially problematic. But I'd like to thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.